my experience. Fetishism, partialism, very rare in women, not so rare in men. Partialism refers to being turned on by a particular part of the body. So an arm or a leg is a particularly attractive stimulus. Women tend not to have these things. It can be a part of the body that actually is not there. So a man might be particularly turned on by an amputee, for example. Quentin Tarantino apparently is particularly turned on by women's feet because they appear predictably in most of his films. There's a good market for men of women's underwear. There's a good There's a good market for used men's underwear for gay males, not for women. This guy collected, tragically, 126 pairs of women's shoes in the course of a history of rape. Tragic. Jerry Brudos here again illustrates the transformation of desire that is negative into something positive. A serial killer from Eugene, Oregon, was severely scolded by his mother when he picked up a pair of women's high-heel shoes and walked around the house in them. He later developed a fetish for women's shoes with the most tragic consequences. I'm not going into the details because I keep you awake at night, but it was a clear example of transformation of a negative into a positive. Now, what I think is going on, Skinner produced this classic book back in 1938, The Behaviour of Organisms, in which he described the various ways in which animals can be trained and humans will be shaped by positive reinforcement to meet desirable outcomes. But then there came a pair of students of Skinner, the Brellans, a man and a couple, and they produced an article called, The Misbehaviour of Organisms. In other words, animals didn't always do what Skinnerian prescription said they should do rationally. So Breland and Breland would train an animal like a pig to pick up a coin and deposit it in a piggy bank, and this for commercial reasons, advertising, circus training, things of this kind. They got going very well with raccoons and all sorts of species, but then very often the whole thing would degenerate, and the pig, rather than depositing the coin, would stop depositing it, would chew it, would lick it, would bury it, would bite it, would do all sorts of things with it. In other words, the token assumed an enormous amount of its incentive value to the animal. And that seems to be something analogous to what happens with fetishes, where they can even displace the real thing. And it seems as if dopamine has been attributed, it's got attributed to the fetish rather more than or equal to the real thing. Again, it's a male thing. Attention. For heterosexual women, not different between male and female stimuli. Men are automatically grabbed the attention of heterosexual males. I said that one. We've been wrong. Right. Sorry. Experience in the virtual world. I go quickly now. These last few. Fantasy is relatively infrequent if they're telling the truth. That is. Relatively infrequent, it's narrative linked, it's not so spontaneous. With males it's all over the place. This fantasy will suddenly switch mid-fantasy if they find something more attractive comes into mind. Experience in the virtual world, pornography, erotica, tends to be something for men with a gay or heterosexual. For women, something much softer with meaning is more attractive. Sex received in exchange for goods or money, it's usually romance linked in the case of women, it's usually straightforward prostitution in the case of men, though not invariably in either case, but usually, overwhelmingly so. This is typical of sex for sale to men. It's much like any other commercial transaction. This is sex for sale, if you could call it that, to women, which is something much more subtle, refined, and durable, or at least they hope it's going to be durable. Often this ends in tears at the end of the week's stay in the Caribbean. Hypersexuality in women is associated with increased bisexuality in men. Hypersexuality tends to be orientation specific. They're hypersexually straight or gay, according to orientation. Adultery, in the case of women, there's often marital disharmony, and it's an act of retaliation, so it has meaning attached to it. In the case of men, often no marital disharmony, it's simply sexual novelty. addiction. In the case of women, there tends to be a personal dimension, favoured a romance element. Women tend, if they get addicted, now again, it sometimes happens, women get addicted to hardcore pornography, but it's rare. It's much more common in men, and the women generally get addicted to chat lines where there's a human being at the other end that they can talk to. And that finally is my book, which won the 2015 Book of the Year award from the Association of American Publishers in the category of psychology. And now it's up to you where we go from here.
Coolidge effect, can you?
Oh, Coolidge effect, yes. The Coolidge effect. David asked about the Coolidge effect. Well, President of the United States Coolidge was on a visit to a chicken farm back before the Second World War, and the party, the First Lady was in one party, the President was in another party. They were taken round separately, and when First Lady Coolidge got to this reproduction unit, the technician said, "Excuse me, you might like to see this very active cockerel here." And she said, "Good heavens, does he go on like this all day?" And the technician said, "Oh yes, he does." She said, "Well, okay, well then please show this to President Coolidge when he gets to this point." Now a bit later, President Coolidge gets to this point on the tour, and the rather nervous technician says, "Excuse me, Mr. President, but your wife has requested that I point out this particularly sexually hyperactive cockerel." And President Coolidge said, "Oh, that's very interesting. Do they change the hen at regular intervals?" And the technician said, "Oh, yes, we do that." He said, "Go tell that to Mrs. Coolidge." So that's the Coolidge effect. Now, the questions, yes, but maybe more to the point, discussion points that you want. I mean, questions suggest that I have the answers to everything. I certainly don't. I mean,